All righty, welcome back to the second installment of Money Buddy. Welcome, Leigh Anne. Welcome, Carly. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome,
Oh,
welcome.
dude, this is such a fun journey already. And here we are taking the second step, the second week. For me personally, recording with Leigh Anne last week was so fun. Like getting to be in that conversation, the hour like flew by. Time flies when we're having fun. But getting to see the people who commented the butterfly emoji, who had additional pieces of like, hey, what do you guys think about this? I'd love to hear you talk about that, Or I love these steps. I can't wait to try them, Like that was so cup filling to see how the conversation landed with other people. Was that the same for you?
Oh my gosh, it was so wonderful. And honestly, what I was really appreciating, first and foremost, that I am not alone and it feels good to know that there are other people who also want to be on this journey.
Yes.
And additionally, that to the people who were adding in their 2 cents, this idea that like you were kind of triggering me in those moments, and I loved it. Like there were things that I had not thought about, had not considered, and because you were present and decided to post that comment, it flooded me with so many thoughts and so much for me to like work with on my own.
Yeah.
So I'm super grateful that you're here and that you are helping me grow. So
Yeah.
thank you guys. Thanks for
Dude,
being.
it's such a circle of like, Leigh Anne and I pouring into each other and then like putting this out there. And I feel like those comments like poured back into me. And especially
Absolutely.
there was one where like they actually said, like, hey, what do you guys think about this? This other facet of the money conversation. And what I told Leanne was like, I feel like they just like threw a few logs on my fire of like, got it going again, of like, oh yeah, what about that? And like, then I started sitting with it and all of these things came up
Yes.
around it. And it's
Oh my
just
gosh.
incredible, like what's possible in community that's not possible when you're just kind of in the solitude and the privacy of your own contemplation with yourself. Like, it's really hard to stoke the fire. And so I'm so grateful for everyone that did that.
Absolutely agreed. I mean, not gonna lie, I have so much to unpack right now. So much. Like
Right? The overwhelm is real, but at the
in
same,
such a good way, in such a
yes,
good because I want to grow. So like I
right.
want to be challenged. I want to be confronted. Like I am here for a new level of understanding. And I can't do that when I'm within my own bubble and my own experience. There is a limit to how much I can see until I have seen something different. And then can even look back and shine that own light on my life and say, actually, here's how I can relate to those comments. And what do I think about that? And what do you think about that experience? Like it's to use the improv phrase, yes, and it is the concept of seeing the experience that you're having, embracing it, and adding to it. And so when you guys comment, you do that for me for sure. Like you are literally adding to my own conversation and hopefully adding to our conversation as a community. Like this is a yes and community in my thoughts.
Totally. Totally. So right off the bat, I want to invite everyone to leave us a comment down below. Let us know that you're here, whether that's a butterfly emoji, like I'm here, see, I'm present. But or you have thoughts. You have like the takeaways at the end of the episode of like what was truly impactful for you? What was maybe a little bit confronting? What's something that's really been on your mind that you would like to put on our minds? Because it translates immediately when we see your comments. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I want this to be like a very co-creative experience of like relevant to anyone who wants to come along with us. So, your comments are definitely received and can't promise that like we're going to spend today talking about taxes. Like that's not necessarily like exactly how fast I'm going to be able to turn it around because like wow,
Yes.
talk about a ball of of
Yeah.
knotted up mess. When I started feeling into my own relationship with that, I was like, I can see why they want a little help with this.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, it's a big one.
That's a big one.
That's a big
That's
one.
such a big one. That's
Yeah.
it's like, oh man. to see it though. Like again, the fact that it was even commented allowed me to see it. It was
Right.
not something that I had even touched yet, which is interesting because it is tax season and I was just doing my taxes, but it did not register. That connection did not register for me. So
Yeah.
I am super grateful that that got brought up. And I like we were just talking before we started the recording this idea of, being in a webinar and like having a thought that pops into your mind that doesn't necessarily have to do with the webinar, but like expands on the idea of the webinar. So like if there's thoughts that pop into your mind and you're just like, you really made me consider this aspect. Like I kind of want to know that. This is just really
Totally.
interesting from a conversation standpoint to see like what's coming up for people.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to that idea that we were talking about in episode one of like money and our relationship to it is so connected to so many different things. Like Leanne and I have spent hours in the last 6 weeks talking about money and our relationship to it. And it's through those kinds of tangents that seem unrelated, but it's like clearly this wanted to come up, this thing that doesn't exactly have a dollar sign on it, but it's definitely part of either what's blocking me from my money or it's part of what's scary about having money or, whatever the case may be. So I think for me, and it sounds like for Leanne, like the comments and the reflections and the additions to the conversation, like so freaking valuable. Talking about like what even is abundance. Like, yes, this is a money focused conversation, but money is just one indicator of abundance. And connected community is another one of like an openness and a flowing of energy between people who are like in it together. Like the knowing that we're not alone, like Leanne said, like that's so valuable. So, yes, thank you. Right off the bat, please leave us your comments. Really appreciate those. Um, and in true divine timing fashion, as Leanne and I were talking this week about like, okay, so, one of the comments I loved the most was like, I love these steps. I want to try these steps. Like, I wrote them all down and I can't wait to try them. Number one, let us know. How did it go? Like, what came up? Because she and I have been on quite the roller coaster with our own processing. So if that was you, you're in good company, in our company at least. But it also got us thinking, like, what else? What else tangible steps, like actual physical taking action steps did we take and that we could, recommend that you try and have an experience with yourself in this space? So one of them, actually, she was like, yeah, I was thinking this. And I was like, great. That was like already exactly what I was thinking. So clearly that step wanted to be discussed in this space and like right up front is this idea around receiving, right? Like when it comes to money, there's like our capacity to receive. And the exercise is quite simple. It's like basically you take a blank page and draw a check on the page and pay to, make a little line, write your name on there, signed the universe, the infinite bank account of as much as you want, right? The blank check is by nature unlimited. And then you feel into, okay? Feel into like what amount are you writing on that check? Like you can take it to the bank, you can cash it, you can have whatever you ask for. And so what amount are you able, willing, desiring to put on that check? And maybe able, willing, and desiring are three different numbers. Like here's what I'd love for that check to be for, here's what I actually can write it for. So like even just feeling into what number do you write on that check? It's so simple and yet
Yeah.
it's an iceberg in itself.
Like what number is it that feels at your edge? It's like that edge between comfort and discomfort. Like what number are you willing to actually write on it? And I have seen people who are like, well, I would write unlimited, and it's like the check by nature is unlimited. You can't, that's, the
Cheater.
potential already exists in the blank check. You
Yeah.
have to be willing to write a number.
Right.
And the writing of the number is the triggering of the experience. For me, I ended up writing $1 million. And like that felt like right at my edge. But for whatever reason, I'm like, 1.5 million sounds like too much. Why does it sound like too much to me?
Right.
Right? Like, why is it that I can't go above 1 million in this moment? And I think that that's a really telling experience because I want to know, like, what is it that's stopping me from asking for more? Why can't I
Yeah.
ask for more? What is it about my experience that says, no, I shouldn't have more? Because I want to be able to grow that capacity. And even just thinking in the concept of numbers, as someone who is job hunting, I was limiting myself. And this was kind of another unexpected exercise that I walked into, similar to the blank check experience of like just being triggered by the number. Um, there was a conversation that I was listening to around what you are willing to apply to a job for. And up until I had actually listened to that conversation, hadn't really understood what I was limiting myself to. But after that conversation, realized that, like, oh, I'm comfortable around 60K a year. That is comfortable to me. And what is my limit? Like, what is how low am I willing to go per year? Like, as an annual salary per year, how low am I willing to go? How high am I willing to go? And that's really the range at which I was valuing myself.
Yeah.
And after listening to that and realizing what my range was, I was like, oh my gosh, like, do I think I'm worth more than that? I actually started applying to jobs that were greater than 100K a year because I was
Wow.
like, at first it felt really uncomfortable and I was at 90 and I was like, oh, 90 is a big number. I don't know that I can go above that. And then I started applying to jobs that were 120K and I was like, this is interesting. I feel comfortable doing it now, where like 2 weeks before, that would not have been me. I would have stuck at 90. And 2 weeks before that, I was stuck at 60. So even just the concept of like opening up this space of being able to say, what I know and what I'm capable of doing is worth more than I realize.
Yeah.
Like, that was really eye opening. And I have friends I know that are like, I'll take something that's, 20K, 30K. And I've tried that mentality and I can't sit in it. I could do it. I could absolutely take one of those jobs, but from a experience of self-worth and an experience of what my time is worth to me, my time feels like it's worth more. When I think about how that annual salary translates into like dollars per hour, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would only be getting, X dollars per hour. That doesn't feel like it's worth it to me. And
Mhm.
so it was an interesting experience to identify where I was really placing my range and my worth in this economic space that we're in right now.
Wow. That's so interesting. And like you think about what a life-changing thing that is, because if you won't apply for the job, you're not going to get it. That's guaranteed.
Right?
And if you apply, there's a chance, you know? And so this is where I think there's like such a perfect bridge between like the theoretical part of the conversation and the real boots on the ground, life-changing impact of this conversation that we're having is like, yes, we're talking about energy. Yes, we're drawing a blank check on our journal page. And like, what does that even do? But like, it's opening up your willingness to receive and letting you see it. And like, you're making me think like, the blank check is kind of, it's like a one-time experience. Like in the exercise, anytime I've ever seen it done, it's like, you're going to get this check one time. So how much do you ask for? But you could also repeat it as far as like a monthly check that you're going to receive, or an annual check, or an hourly check, like what are those numbers? Because again, like all you're doing is reflecting to yourself, like, what do you think you're worth? And that's really where this conversation gets real, as far as like what you think you're worth is the cap that you put on your life. As far as like, oh, I'm comfortable at 90K, but I can't go above that. And like, yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking like, I absolutely can go there with, I wrote a bid a year ago. We're almost to the end of the astrological year. We're almost to like the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. We're almost to like the Aries equinox. And a year ago, I wrote a bid for $350,000 that was supposed to be like paid out over 2 years. I did not get that bid. Like it wasn't awarded to me, but I wrote it and I claimed it that like, if you want me to do this job, you will pay me $350,000. And that, like, again, it didn't matter that they didn't pick my bid. Even just writing it was like, I spent like over a week on raising the number. to where it felt like an even energy exchange. And then submitting it, like giving it to these people that I had been working with and like showing them, like, here's what I'm worth, and opening myself up to them to say, like, we don't want you, like, we don't think it's worth that, is basically what they said. And I'm like, okay, no worries. I mean, you're buying 2 years of my life. So if you're gonna do that, I mean, I'm not gonna sell it to you for nothing, right? But like the exercise isn't in what people are willing to pay, it's in what you're willing to charge, what you're willing to ask for. And that again is the mirror for your self-worth. So powerful.
I hear too, like I was just mentally going on to this train of like self-worth as it relates to what I'm willing to give myself too.
Yeah.
So I know we've talked about this idea that like worth in my mind is more than money. It's time and it's energy. And I started working out, which was an uncomfortable experience, but it was uncomfortable because I didn't want to spend the time on myself. My time felt like a deficit. It felt like I was, wasting time. And time wasted is implying that I'm wasted. Like that's not the mentality that I want to have. So
Mhm.
in the space of like deciding that I wanted to work out, that was me claiming time for me giving time to me and energy to me, saying, all these other projects have to happen, but I'm prioritizing me. And it was an uncomfortable experience in the giving of the time. Like the workout itself is uncomfortable. And like I knew that it was going to be that way, but like it was the actual experience of getting to the gym because I looked at that experience as an hour and a half of my time gone.
Yeah.
And where did it go? And to reframe that for myself meant that I was placing worth in myself. I was giving myself time. I was giving me my own time and I was receiving my own time. And I was giving myself energy and receiving that energy. Like that's in my mind the element of self-care. Like you are literally receiving the energy that you are giving to yourself. So for me, working out was self-care, but it was also me up valuing my worth and saying, actually, I deserve to own more time of my day. And that's going to be spent in the gym. That's going to be spent learning the things. I'm willing to spend money on myself by taking a course. I will spend money on this course because I want to up level my knowledge. That's me increasing my worth, me finding worth in me to begin with that even lets me shell out the money for it.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of like, from a self worth perspective, both giving and receiving that was very cyclical for me that I encountered as I was writing my letters to money and like up leveling what it is that I was experiencing in my relationship with money. As I was expanding my thoughts about money, it became about more than money. It started becoming money as time as energy. Like here are all of these things that play into this experience and I want to be receiving them, but that means I have to find myself worthy of them.
Yeah. Yes. God, I love that you brought self-care into it and like receiving our time from ourselves. Like before I started like my consistent self-care, being in my own solitude felt like I was gonna like come out of my own skin. Like I could not handle spending time by myself because it felt like I was wasting my time. Like I need to be taking care of someone. And like someone needs to not be me, needs to be someone worth taking care of. And so, like, even beginning self care, like, that was the bridge that I had to close, like, the gap that I had to build a bridge over was like, I'm worth taking care of. Like, I'm worth spending my time on. And like, I knew that my time was valuable, but I wasn't worthy of it. And again, like this is where the money conversation it devolves into so many other things. And I love that about it. It's like just an entry point.
And I am attempting at reformed people pleasing. I have been a people pleaser majority of my life, which
Yeah,
means that other people's needs have come before my own.
right,
And that means that I have been valuing other people's needs over my own.
right.
And as I learn to give more to myself and receive more from myself, that means that their needs and what is their priority does not have to be my priority. Like my priority is me first and foremost, which is uncomfortable even to say now, knowing that I'm working more on my self-care, working more on receiving and giving to myself.
Yeah.
It's still difficult to say, actually, I'm going to have to say no to you because my needs need to be met in this moment. And I need to give my time to this. So, even having a friend call me on the phone when I'm in the middle of something, to say no and reject that phone call feels uncomfortable because this is me saying no to they want to talk to me. That is their need in this moment. And I'm saying, actually, what I'm doing right now is what needs to take priority. This is what has my energy and my time. And I'm going to continue giving to it because that's what needs to happen for me.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's just really difficult to say no to others from my personal experience, to say no to others. And that in itself, that interaction is a level of self-worth. Like, where are you placing their needs versus where are you placing your own needs? Where are you placing their value versus where are you placing your own value? So what are you worth to yourself? What is your time worth to yourself?
Yeah.
Because whatever it's worth, if you're giving it to other people, then you have deemed yourself unworthy of it. And
Yeah.
that's not to say that like you should give all to yourself and none to anyone else, but that does mean that like you need a healthy balance. And if you are imbalanced and giving more to others than you are to yourself, then like that's what I was noticing for me. I was really good at giving to other people. And I think that is a beautiful quality in myself. I also think that I am so much healthier because I have increased my own value in my own mind.
Yeah.
And I see it reflected in every person that I talk to.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I kind of lost my train of thought there. That was so good. I feel like there's no top end to this spectrum. That's the gist of what I was wanting to say. Was like literally yesterday, I was in a situation that I was like, wait, why did I say yes to this? Why did I agree to do this? And it's like, oh, because so and so asked me. And I didn't even think about it. I was just like, oh, you need me to do this? Yeah, sure. Of course. I'm free that day. And I just like basically gave away my whole day to something that like then when it's yesterday and like I have to actually go do the thing, I'm like, this isn't that fun. Like when I really tune into it, this isn't really something that I care to do. And like, why am I on the hook for this? And then it was like, it was a really interesting contemplation because it comes back to so many of the things like that you were saying there. And one of my like recovering people pleaser, recovering codependent, like however you want to put it. Um, Number one, I gave her an auto yes. I didn't sleep on it. I didn't I mean, I answered the phone. She asked me. I told her yes, like all in the span of a phone call. So I like did not take any time to like tune into myself and be like, is this something that if I was walking by a buffet of all life's experiences, like this is what I would choose? No, no, it's not. But she asked me. And so like I have this thing where one of my needs is to feel needed. And like that used to get me in so much fucking trouble, so much trouble, like run myself off the cliff over giving, over giving, over giving, because what I need is to feel needed. And then I would allow people to be wickedly dependent on me because that fed my sense of self-worth to some extent, but it also was killing me in the process. And so, like, there are lots of ways to feel like you have worth, that you have value, and other people needing you is one that, I mean, it works. It makes you feel like, oh, see, they need me. And it's like, yeah, but is that consuming you in the process or is it feeding you in the process? And like the auto yes is something to like really watch for. Like I've heard that a million times. And yet yesterday I'm sitting there like 30 minutes from leaving and I'm like, why am I in such a funky mood? Oh, because I don't actually want to go do this thing. Great, and that's almost 8 years of self-care later. So please know that there's no top end to like how much we can pull ourselves back into our core and like assess like where are you sourcing your worth? How do you get deposits into that self-worth bank account? Like, yeah.
Absolutely. And interestingly, this would probably be a year ago, and I have not put it into practice consistently, but I know that it's something that I want to do, and it speaks to the auto yes. I heard someone talking about how in their attempts to address their own auto yes, they decided to postpone every answer that they gave by 24 hours.
Yeah.
And every response, as the ability to create a new habit, became, oh, you want me to do this thing? That's wonderful. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. And I absolutely need to do that. This concept that like 100% is easier than 90% when you're switching a habit. Like don't try and identify when you can say the immediate yes. Just go ahead and say, actually, in every circumstance when anyone asks me for anything, I'm allowed to say, can I get back to you within 24 hours? And when you change that to your habit, then you can better parse out what you actually want to say yes to. And as you get better at parsing, you can shorten that time if you'd like to into, a more immediate response. But I've really liked that as an idea. It's not something I kept consistent. I did try it and stop and try it and stop. And it's something that I do want to pick back up again. Because in the true habit of creating habits, like it's never consistent 100% of the time. So like you just consistently get better at picking the habit back up again until you're picking it up after you've dropped it for a day. Like it is what it is.
Yes,
So I really do love the idea of letting that automatic response become, let me get back to you in 24 hours.
totally. You
And
know,
it feels good even to say it, but it feels awkward when I'm saying it in the moment because I'm so used to the immediate yes. And because my habit is still an immediate yes. Like if I think I'm into it, and to your point, I am absolutely into the idea of being needed. So, like, if I hear someone's need for me, I'm like, yes, I got you. And it just puts me in a deficit of my own worth. Like there is time that I need for myself there too. And I am so good at committing to big things that I don't even think about as being big until 24 hours later. When I'm like, oh, actually looking at my calendar as I'm trying to fit this in, this is kind of rough. And I think the value of the 24-hour wait is that even if I find some space in my calendar, then the yes is an honest yes. And if I'm realizing I wanted to say yes, but I'm actually already booked, there is no scenario where I have to go back on my word. So it makes me a more honest and I was gonna say integritous, like and I have more integrity in my word when I commit to something.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and like the lady that I heard talk about this most recently, is a woman named Terry Cole, and she wrote a book called Boundary Boss. She also has a YouTube channel. Highly recommend. Her content's very good. And she mostly teaches out of her own lived experience of being like radically codependent, like world's biggest people pleaser. So she's got stories to tell of like what it costs you to operate that way. And the part that like is so interesting is like I woke up yesterday morning with the thought in my mind of like, I have 3 hours until I need to leave for that thing. And it was like this time-based, like pressure-based, like I need to go do this thing. And so then in those 3 hours, I was like aware that like I have to go do this thing. And it was like 30 minutes before I had to leave when I really got clear on like, I don't feel good. And so it's like,
Yeah.
you know, like talking about the time in your calendar and like, am I booked or am I not? And like, it looked like that was going to be like a 3 hour thing of, I need to leave at 10:30. I'll be back around 1:30, but it wasn't. It was like 6 hours because from the moment I woke up, it was like on me that I have to do this. So I think it's easy to underestimate like the actual energy
The
required.
psychological weight. Yeah.
Yes. So that's one piece. Um, and then I lost another piece, but it'll come back if it's supposed to.
I think too, the concept of like balancing out what it's worth in the multiple different phases. So, what it's worth for my time, what it's worth for my energy, what it's worth for the actual monetary value. I think about like my pet sitting. and the fact that I love pet sitting. And there's a willingness in me to accept less money because I enjoy it, because I'm getting energy back from it.
Yeah.
There's a balance to that.
Yeah.
I am charging less, enjoying more. So
Right.
like on the scale of 100%, I'm still getting what I want out of it.
Yes.
And if I enjoyed it less, I'd be charging more. Like, I don't want to do this. And so it has to be worth it to me
Yes.
and make me feel as though I am valuing my own time.
That reminds me of another piece I was going to say, which is, sometimes the auto yes is easier to be aware of. Like, for instance, when someone emails me, it's a lot easier to like, take my time with it and be like, this feels a little off. Like, I'm going to sleep on that and see how I feel tomorrow because there's already automatically that space. But like when your phone rings, when someone just like walks up to you in a public place, like, I mean, I feel like those are the kinds of places where the auto yes is like, it's a lot more likely that we're going to just offer it in the moment.
Yeah.
But the other thing that you mentioned there of like the level of enjoyment, the level of energy that it gives me is worth a lot in deciding like how much do you need to charge for that thing. Like my activation sessions come to mind of like I've given away a lot of activation sessions and I do it because I walk away from those sessions feeling energized. Like every single session I've ever done, I walk away feeling like I am uplifted. And so at that point, like, do I need to exchange money? It would be nice. And few people, they book a session and they pay for it and they tell me when to show up. Like if you want to put it on my calendar and you want to be in charge of like what day we're going to do it and what time and how long it's going to be, then yes, you need to pay me because at that point, like I'm having to muster energy that maybe I wouldn't have had. But these free ones, it's like I get to choose, like I don't want to have any this week because I already have this and this and this or I want to have four this week because there's nothing else on my calendar and that sounds like fun, like playing with it as far as like being paid in other ways other than money is something that I think is like a really fun contemplation to think about that also goes into self-worth. Like, what's really important to you? Because money is probably up there. We all need money to buy food and have shelter and like all of that. But also, like, your soul is most likely interested in a lot of things that have very little to do with money. Like I want to feel connected to people. I want to have like deep conversations. I want to have breakthrough moments in community with other people. Like, you really can't buy those. You can't even try to buy those. So, if I have access to it, like I'm willing to show up and not get paid because I'm getting this out of it. So, yeah, that's
Yes, absolutely. I had a thought too when you were talking about your email experience and the ability to wait. And it occurred to me that that is also a payment of time that you are giving to yourself because I've had to expand my comfort with waiting in the response. I want to respond immediately and choose to wait. The amount of time that I'm willing to wait is varied. And sometimes I need more time than I actually want to give myself.
mm,
There's a sense of recognizing that knowing I need more time and feeling as though I should respond sooner, the difference between that time, whether it's an hour or a day, is really time that I am giving to myself. This is, again, like another receiving experience of saying, I am willing to give myself this time and I am willing to take this time.
yeah.
And whatever comes from that comes from knowing that I did what I needed to do for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It also reminds me of like, what are your values? Like, what's the most important thing? What's the second most important thing? Third most important thing? And if you're the most important thing is like responding to people within 20 minutes, then you're going to say a lot of things that may not be in alignment with like who you really are, what you need, what you feel, all of that. But like, I think you can, or like in mine, I see emotional clarity is one of my top values and is usually the top value of like, I want to have integrity in what I say. Like you were saying before, I want to offer things that are real and true for me. And if that means I can't respond for 8 days, then I love the phrase worth the wait. It's going to be worth the wait. And if you're somebody that's like, I want something real and true, then you should hang around and wait for what it's going to be because it's going to be worth it. But if you're somebody that needs like me to drop everything and just give you what you want to hear, we're not having a good fit here anyway, like, so I think looking at how much time you're willing to take and give to yourself in that situation or any of these kinds of situations where people are asking things from you is a good place to look at like mirroring back to you, like what is most important? Like what's your top value? Is it to be pleasing and give the person what they want? Or is it emotional clarity? Is it, soul level honesty? Like, and there's
Yeah.
not a right or wrong answer in this. It's just like that awareness building, being able to look at like, what is it today? And maybe what do you wish it was? What would feed you more than consume you? Like we were talking about earlier in the conversation. Yeah.
I think that speaks to self-worth in relationships in general. Like you are giving of yourself, but you are also receiving what that other person is willing to give you. And what do you think you're worth? Do you think you're worth someone who forgets the date and time you were supposed to hang out? Like if you think you're worth that, then you're the one who knows.
Yeah.
And if you have decided actually that is I'm worth more than that, then it's not acceptable then for people to automatically, you know, I had a friend who was constantly like changing our date because something else would come up and she's like, "Oh, well, I have this other thing that I need to do down now during that time. Let's do it at another time."
Mm,
And that's only going to work for so long. I understand that scheduling conflicts come up, but there comes a point where I feel pushed back and pushed off. And it's like, if you don't value your time with me, I value my time enough to say, I want to do other things with this time than be, rescheduled.
yeah.
And I know because I have also been in that experience where like you isolate yourself from people in those circumstances. You're saying, you can't be in my life if you do this.
Hmm.
And I want people who want to be in my life. So that's really the compromise that I need to make. But there's, to your point, like an unwillingness to be alone. The minute you get more comfortable with being alone,
Yeah.
it gets easier to say no to those people. It's like, actually, I treat myself better than you treat me. So like I'm more comfortable being alone right now than I am being in your presence because I value me and
Right.
I have decided that like I can give to myself and all you're doing is taking. Like
Right.
this is not what I need.
Another awesome mirror for being able to see your
Yeah,
sense of self-worth. What do you think you're worth? Are you worth being remembered? Are you worth being prioritized? Are you worth being communicated with? I mean, this was another situation that happened late last week and it was over email. So it was a lot easier for me to like sleep on it and wake up the next day. And I'm like, no, I still don't know. It's still foggy. And so she's asking me a question. I still don't know. I'm gonna sleep on it again. So I did two sleeps. And then I was like, I'm still I'm still torn. And there's a phrase I absolutely love that's like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no, period. Like, don't try to talk yourself into things that like aren't an instant like, oh yeah, absolutely, I want to do that, like, and it kind of goes, it's
absolutely.
counter to what we were talking about before with like, don't do the auto yes. But I think you know what I mean as far as like the full body hell yes,
Yeah,
like that's different than like people pleaser wanting to instantly, be what the
absolutely.
other person wants to be. Yeah, wants
I
you.
mean, how amazing would it be to have every day, every experience feel like a hell yes? Like
Yeah,
that's honestly, I think that's the dream here, at
that's the
least for me.
ideal for me too.
I
Yeah,
love.
same.
So from that perspective, you're really gauging every experience that's coming towards you in a receiving fashion of saying, is this a hell yes for me? And do I want to accept it into my life? Or is it And maybe no. I mean, like there's always a scenario where like the unsureties end up becoming amazing experiences. So like if you're not sure and still want to give it a try, like absolutely do it. I know um this is a Tony Robbins commentary talking about like you don't know the decision's going to be bad or good until you've made it. So if you don't have evidence to identify whether it's going to be a good or bad decision for you, you can't go wrong. You're going to learn somehow, whether you decline it and feel like you missed out or whether you accept it and then we're like, yeah, actually that wasn't for me. I wasn't enjoying it. Like
Yeah.
you'll learn from the experience, but you get better and better at identifying what is a hell yes. That's literally the process.
Yeah.
So take it in, enjoy it, experience it. Because I'm like, again, that's what I'm trying to do for my life is to make more experiences hell yeses. Like I want to
Yeah.
go pet sitting, and yeah, I want to get paid for it, and I want to play with the puppies, and I want to have fun.
Good.
Like hell yeah, I do.
It
Like
kind
hell yeah,
of,
I want to help other people.
yes. Yes. And maybe even that's another like exercise that would be valuable in this conversation of like a focus wheel or even just a list of like, what are the hell yes things in your life that like when that shows itself to you, I'm all in. I'm here for it.
Absolutely.
Like breakthrough moments is something
And it
that
doesn't
comes
even
to
have to
mind.
be a list that has to come to your mind right now. You can literally post like, this is my hell yes list on the wall. And then anytime something happens, be like, we're adding that to the list. That was amazing. We're doing that again.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that is a cumulative list that can grow the rest of your life
Right.
and can change the rest of your life. You could decide you don't want something on that list anymore. And it's like, actually, I think we've exhausted the hell out of this yes. Like
There's no more
we're
hell
done.
in the yes. Yeah.
We're done now.
Yeah. Well, because we grow and we change and we evolve, and we need different stimulation to do the evolutionary process of like where we are today than what we needed back then. Leanne and I were talking before we joined of um, like dating apps and hooking up versus long term and like being friends versus like jumping into physical like I mean there was a time in my life where I was a hell yes for like having sex with a hot dude, and like at this point there's no hell left in the yes. Like you're gonna have to bring me something a little bit more than like a pretty face and a nice body. Like that just doesn't do it for me anymore. I don't need that anymore. So like there's a mirror for self-awareness in what is your current hell yes, how has that changed over what it used to be, as you do, like she said, like it evolves and you grow into new things. Because like breakthrough moments, like I wouldn't have been able to say that like even 5 years ago. Like I don't know, like I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a CEO, and like then I became a CEO and I was like I don't want this anymore. Like we manifest the thing that we thought we
Yeah.
wanted, we thought that was our hell yes, and then we figure out like, or we grow through the experience of it and we heal through the experience of it and we no longer feel magnetized to that experience. Like now it's the next thing. And like that's what you need. And to like trust the hell yes. Yeah. I'm glad we got to go into that because
Yeah.
again, like especially as a recovering people pleaser, I wanted to be able to answer her question favorably. She asked, I I would love to say yes. I'd love for her to feel satisfied. And it really did come back down to like this conversation of like, what are you worth? And what do you believe the value of you is? And what are you willing to tolerate? What are you available for? And this is the second time that, there has been like I'm giving my time for free and the person is like a no call, no show is what I would call it, of like there's no communication. I'm sitting there and nobody comes. And both times that that's happened to me, the person is like, yeah, so can we reschedule? And I'm like, no, no, we're not. No, I was there. I did your session. You just weren't there for it, like, and again, it really depends on if that was something that like the situation was very different and I had plans to meet up with Leigh Anne and Leigh Anne no call no showed me. I would reschedule with her because we've already been on so many Zooms. There's a track record of like she shows up. So what's wrong? Like what happened? Like I know for a fact that something is going on here, that like I'm available to hear it out and to be there. And like I think relationships, like you have to be able to do that. But the first time you don't show up for the first date, oh my gosh. And oh my God, I'm like healing in the moment because there was a different situation. This was before either of the other two, but like this was like 7 years ago. A guy stood me up for our first date on New Year's Eve. That was when our first date was supposed to be, and he was a no call, no show. And I still went out with him like two other times. Mm,
Mm.
not my proudest moment, but it
We
goes
live
to
and we
show.
learn.
It
We live
goes
and
to
we learn.
show what you're available for. Like back
And
then, I was like, "Oh, you do want to see me? Okay, yeah. Yeah, let's have a date. Let's reschedule that date." "Oh,
well,
you
and
fell asleep? Oh, okay. I buy that. That's good enough."
there's there's always some level of power dynamic. Like, do I want to be in a relationship more? And that gives them more power to do more shitty things because I'm like, I want the
Totally.
relationship more
Totally.
than I actually want the good treatment. And
Yeah.
I think like that's true in a lot of ways that, what are we giving power to
Yeah.
and how attached are we to that experience? Speaking, to money, it's the same thing. Like, how attached are we to like the needing of money versus just allowing it to be what it is? And I think of, again, like this concept of money in a relationship. Like, you're creating that relationship to money, you're creating your relationship to yourself, and you are giving it the values that you have decided are important to you.
Mhm.
And there's one, her first 100K, Tori, I can't remember her last name, Tori Dunlap. She suggested doing money dates as a relationship experience. And she sets it as like, this is the day of the month that you sit and you do your budgeting, but like you make it a date, you make it an enjoyable experience. Like, you're creating the joy of this experience in the same way you can do it with, self-worth and self-love. Like, enjoy, like put yourself in experiences where you're going to enjoy yourself. And that is literally like, okay, I want to enjoy my experience with money. How do I enjoy it? And you
Hmm.
could be going and grabbing your favorite coffee drink before you sit down to do your budget. You could be ordering yourself a nice dinner. You could be dancing before it or putting on some lovely music. Like, set the scene, make it enjoyable because that's the relationship that you're creating. And
Wow.
like, so how, like, again, how much do you value your relationship to money? Are you willing to put in the work to make it a good, like, feeling experience? How can you make your experiences with money feel better in the moment?
I
And
love
I know that that's going to require working through a lot of the uncomfortable feelings of money. Like, you have to actually sit down with the money. And for me, there was a lot of discomfort at first, and you have to work through the discomfort. I actually, another Thich Nhat Hanh experience, he was talking about mindfulness and its relationship to like physical experiences. So you talk about when your body's not feeling good, like when your muscles are knotted, you need to like do the work to massage those muscles. And the same is true for your emotional body, that like when there is a knot there, you have to massage the knot, you have to sit with it, you have to sit in the discomfort. It's not going to feel great, but that tension will eventually ease, the blood flow will come back into it, and it's going to start feeling relaxed, and then it's going to start feeling good. So like, you have to face the discomfort before you can work through to the good feelings. So if you're not having a good feeling with like self care, that is something to work through. It's not something to avoid, it's something you have to actually work through if you want it to start feeling good. And if you're having bad experiences or uncomfortable experiences with money, like, again, I know I mentioned this in the last episode too, like, it was extremely uncomfortable to sit with it at first. And now I'm into the play phase of like, how can I make this more enjoyable? Because I value the relationship that I have with money and I'm enjoying where this is going. How can I make it more fun? How can I make each interaction with money more pleasurable? So even like the element of the grocery shopping and making it a game. Like, for me, it's a playtime now, and that's not what it ever was before. But I'm focusing on the relationship and how I interact with the things in order to build those relationships back better.
Yeah. I love that, a money date. Like I was even picturing like getting dressed up, putting on your
Yeah,
heels, like lighting
I'm
some
into
candles. Like, I
this.
mean, how would you show up to a date? How would you show up to like something that you want to build that like loving relationship with? Like you want money to find you attractive so that it'll come closer to you. Like, I mean, like with anything, like you have to find yourself attractive, like
Yes.
again, like going back to self-worth. So I love that. I'm taking that one with me. And I'm definitely going to try that. Like next time I've been doing my like I don't know if mine's necessarily a budget. It's more like a balance sheet of like here's the money I have, here's my debt, and like what's the balance of my accounts basically, like when you put
Mhm.
all that together. And just to even check in and see like how much money do I have like month to month. But I've been doing that like on the first of the month. And this next one, I'm totally gonna do that. I'm gonna like put it on my calendar. Like this is my money date. And I'm
Okay.
gonna, yeah, like put on my sexy jeans and my heels. And I don't ever get
Right?
dressed up like that. But still, like, why not?
Whatever,
Why
yeah,
not make
whatever
it a
makes
special
you feel good.
occasion?
You want to feel
Yes.
good, you want to enjoy your experience with money, so 100% enjoy that experience.
Yeah.
And I also like similar to what you were saying about like your consistency. Like I would agree that like I did a budget at the beginning of February and then at the end of February with the intention for March. And my goal ultimately, like I still struggle to sit down with it and look at it consistently. But my goal is to get to the point where I'm identifying things that like money I've spent outgoing, money that's incoming every week. So like at the end of every week, like do a Friday sit down
Hmm.
and then get to the point where I can actually look at my money every day consistently. Because again, that idea that like where your energy grows is what grows, or where your energy goes is what grows, right? So it's like that's what I'm trying to create is like I want to grow my money. That means I need to get to the point where I'm comfortable looking at it daily, where I can like get
Yeah.
excited about seeing my bank account and be like, all right, like this is the start of the next day. This is a new opportunity. This is new
Yeah.
potential. And I'm not there yet. But
Yeah.
that's what I'm working towards right now because money's starting to feel good as an interactive experience.
Mm. I love that. That's such a good one. So we tacked in one more tangible step
Yeah.
to this episode. And so if we look back and recap like the actual, like the action steps that you could be taking that we talked about today, we started with the blank check. So what is your capacity to receive? What is your capacity to ask for either a lump sum? You could do an annual amount, a monthly amount, an hourly amount, like kind of playing around with all of those numbers. When I've done that, actually, like I feel like when I think about how much I want to make on an annual basis, and then without doing the math, but just coming up with like, okay, so then how much would I be willing to make on a monthly basis? My monthly number never will add up into my annual number. Does that make sense? Like if I want to make $500,000 a year, you've got to be willing to make like whatever that is, 500,000 divided by 12. And then I'm like over here, like, I want to make $15,000 a month. It's like, well, that's not going to add up into $500,000. And then you go even that down to that next step of like, okay, so if you want to make 15,000 a month, even let's say, how many hours a week are you willing to work and what does that mean for your hourly rate? And it's like again there's just this disconnect of like yes I want 15K a month, but hourly I'm like $120 and I'm willing to work 20 hours a week. Well, that doesn't add up. So like again, like looking at these numbers, it's just really interesting as far as like what are you available for? Like what are you
And
able to
yeah,
ask for?
it's an excellent way to challenge yourself because especially when you can get down to the hourly, like I feel like that's the nitty-gritty of, okay, I'm used to $30 an hour and now in theory it would have to be $150 an hour or whatever it has to be. What's stopping me from that number? Because
Right.
now it's much more real. It's like, well, I could go out and ask somebody for $150 right now. What's stopping me?
Well,
Like,
exactly. Especially where depending on what you're doing, like where I'm offering coaching, like I'm going to sit with you for an hour. So that's my hourly rate. And like thinking about if I wanted to hit those income goals, like my hourly rate needs to be way higher than what I'm
yeah,
currently willing to charge, right? Like the monthly goal, the annual goal, that's very conceptual. but what you're actually going to get paid is what you're willing to negotiate for on like an hour by hour basis. So yeah,
So true. And
super triggering potentially, but also
yeah.
very, very reflective of like what is it that you're available for? I think when we get down to the hourly level, that's like closest to where we are now. And
Mhm.
thinking about the monthly or the yearly, like those are more like the goals or the stretch goals of where we want to go.
I hear
Uh,
that. And that definitely resonates. As someone who is like starting to get into coaching and considering value and packages, like what is it that I'm willing to charge
yeah,
for my presence, for my abilities and my skills? Like how can I be of service? And
right,
also, what is that service worth?
right.
Like there's a very real value of self right there, which is just really
It's
exciting.
it's one of my favorite things about being in a more entrepreneurial space is that
Mhm.
you can revisit this conversation like over and over and over again versus like if you get a job for even 100K a year, that's pretty much set. And like you're not really going to revisit like what am I worth? What's my value? How much should I be getting paid? Like that's going to be a pretty rare contemplation versus like when you're selling your hours 1 hour at a time or like 4 sessions at a time or whatever it is, like all the time you're thinking like what is the ratio here of like the
Mhm.
energy that I'm putting into it and like what I'm getting out of it and like balancing those accounts like it's yeah, definitely profound. So the blank check and like what is it that you want to receive? Another couple that we talked about was I don't know if this is necessarily like a super tangible step, but just to be aware of the auto yes and looking at like where is it easier for you to take your time and like let me sleep on it, let me get back to you. Where is it harder? Is it situations? Is it certain people that draw
I feel
that
like,
auto yes more up out of you?
yeah,
Something to be aware of there.
very true. And I was just literally thinking of that in the context of like worth and like auto devaluing myself almost
Oh,
like
yeah.
which is just a really weird way of phrasing it but that's
It's
kind
a
of what it's like
powerful way to phrase it.
how am I experiencing that and how can I reframe that.
Yeah. The other one along those same lines is like taking stock of your hell yeses. Like
Yeah.
what is on the hell yes list, maybe what used to be on the hell yes list that's not so much anymore, what's maybe coming into view that is your hell yes, maybe something that you would love to experience but maybe don't experience ever or all the time and you want more of that. Kind of making a running list of those. And then the last one I can think of is the money date. So like actually making it into more of like a intimate experience, like getting yourself in the mood and treating yourself to a lovely
Making it
time.
pleasurable to hang out with
Yeah,
money.
pleasure. Yes, pleasure. That's a good word to put it. Yes.
Make it pleasurable to hang out with money.
Yeah, why not? I mean, I feel like again, where it's all just a mirror back to you, it's also making it pleasurable to spend time with you, to spend time with yourself. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, any other thoughts as far as like tangible action steps that we
Hmm.
mentioned that I might have forgot? Leave us a comment.
Yeah. If
What
if
else?
y'all noticed or even had any ideas of your own about steps you want to take, like
Yes.
shout them out
Yes.
because I'll totally take on those steps.
100%. She and I both, like, when we started talking about this, it's like, we're doing science, we're doing experiments,
For
and
science,
for
guys, for
science,
science.
for real. And I want to know what works.
Uh,
And I'm willing to try anything once and see
yeah.
what my own lived experience is with it. And then talk about it on here. Like, here's what that gave me. Here's what it was promised to give me. And I got something, I mean, whatever my experience.
Or even like, what was my initial reaction at even the thought of doing that? Like money
Yeah.
letters. What do I even think about that? Like, how did my
Right.
emotions respond? And reluctance and avoidance was the first thought. But like, when I'm
Totally.
faced with a new way to challenge myself, what's the fear that comes up? Because if I'm challenging myself, generally something's there that's fizzling.
Yeah. Yeah. So like any steps that you guys can think of that we should try, any we've mentioned through the couple episodes like different people that we listen to of, we check out this YouTube channel or this one. If there's a current person out there making content that you think like, hey, this is fitting in exactly with what you're talking about, please leave those in the comments. Again, I would love to
Yeah.
explore what's out there that can help us, especially for free. Like everything that we have suggested on the show so far is free to access. It just costs your time. So technically, it's not exactly free, but it's as free as it can get. Okay.
I mean, what is your relationship to money worth to you? Like, what
Right.
is your relationship to yourself worth to you?
Yeah.
Like that's the decision you're making in the moment. It's not worth more than me going to see my kids' soccer games. Okay, that's fine. It's not worth more to me than, the project that I've got going on the side. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like it's literally just identifying for yourself like the value out of it.
Yes. What's worth it to you? And if it's worth your time, and I'm already investing time in exploring my money relationship. So if you guys have tips and things that we should think about, throw a couple logs on the fire. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we will be back again to continue this exploration of what else works as far as looking at our money blocks, being willing to see what's there, being willing to face the fears, being willing to feel the feelings that, oh God, they get so sticky sometimes, but ultimately that's what it is feeling the feelings that are there, that are already lurking under the surface. And these little exercises that we're talking about, I think that's really all they're doing, is helping us to feel into our relationship with these things. So, Leigh Anne, thank you so much for yet another enlightening conversation. I'm already planning my money date in the back of my mind. I'm like picking out my outfit and everything,
Love
playing my sexy
it.
playlist and whatnot. Don't you better believe I got a couple of those. So, yeah, gonna make it fun.
Oh my God, I love it. I'm so glad to be here with you. I'm so glad we're
Yeah,
doing this. Like this
I know.
is let's make it let's make it pleasurable. Let's like turn
Yeah.
life into some hell yeses.
Yes. I Money Buddy is one of my hell yeses. Of like,
Absolutely is for
I
me too.
I want to see. I want to see what's next, like in my
Yep.
own day-to-day contemplation and what comes up in these conversations. Like we did have a loose ballpark of like what we wanted to talk about today, but some of the
Yeah.
stories and the examples and the different facets that came up, like again, like I don't think we can hear these reminders enough. There's no top end to how good we can get at being aligned with our soul and living in integrity with who we really are. And so to get to co-create something that makes a space for that to happen, hell freaking yes. That's,
Oh,
that's what I'm
yes.
here for.
High
Oh,
five. I'm here for
right?
this.
Yay. Cool. Okay. Well, guys, we will see you on the next one. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you soon. Okay, bye.